Former President Trump visiting the state of Georgia, battered by Helene, helping to move emergency supplies as President Biden plans to tour the devastation in North Carolina. So where is Vice President Kamala Harris?
On Helene, people in western North Carolina were drowning in their houses this weekend. Others were losing everything. President Biden was at his beach house, and Vice President Harris was hosting political fundraisers on the West Coast.
The president did exactly what a president in this moment needs to do, which is directing his team to take action. Look, and I talked about how the vice president also did her calls. She's going to be going to the FEMA agency and the center to get her briefing.
Former Governor of Arkansas, Mike Huckabee, was praised for his response during Hurricane Katrina, and he joins us now. Governor, good morning to you. It is just staggering what has happened to millions of people in the Southeast as a result of this storm. And of course, you've had experience dealing with natural disasters during your time as governor. So what do you think of the response from the candidates and the president so far?
Well, I really think Joe Biden and Kamala Harris have missed an opportunity. It's not a political one. It's a leadership opportunity. The reason they need to be there is not because they can fix it. Their presence doesn't make the water go away. It doesn't put people back in their homes. It doesn't save a life. Here's what it does. It calls attention to the severity of the storm. It causes people across the country to realize how bad this is. It's apocalyptic. There's no other way to describe it. And what hit Western Carolina is something that is just unprecedented in terms of the scope of it, because it's destructive to its infrastructure. Their presence brings attention, which also means people across the world start donating, they start helping, they start realizing that this is a serious, more serious than ever situation. They missed that opportunity, and that's a shame. The second thing they do is they call attention to the fact that this is people first, paperwork second. They need to make that the policy of the government to put aside filling out forms and paperwork and saying our first and only responsibility right now is to take care of the people who are displaced, the people who are in danger. They blew it on both of them.
But there seems to be a pattern here, Governor, from East Palestine to Maui, now to North Carolina. Why does this Biden-Harris administration seem so slow to react, and many people would argue seem disengaged when reacting to tragedies? It doesn't add up. Why do you think?
I don't understand it. I really don't, because historically, one of the, frankly, best people ever in the office of president to deal with crisis was Bill Clinton. He was absolutely the master of it, and I give him full credit for being a person who always gave the empathy and came in person to when there was a natural disaster, and he showed up, and his presence and his empathy for people was, frankly, probably the best in my lifetime. I don't ever remember Democrat or Republican president being better at it than he was. He's, frankly, I think, the template and role model for how it ought to be done.
Yeah, and Barack Obama came up here during Sandy. To your point, it's not Democrat, Republican, it's human. And it doesn't make sense why this Biden-Harris administration doesn't act human at times. I want to get your thoughts on this before we let you go. James Comer subpoenaing the DHS for records relating to Governor Tim Walz's alleged ties to the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party. In this subpoena, Comer writes, quote, "The committee has recently received whistleblower disclosures informing the committee of serious concern among Department of Homeland Security personnel regarding a long-standing connection between the CCP and Minnesota Governor Timothy James Walz. The committee has learned of a non-classified Microsoft Teams group chat among DHS employees that contains information about Governor Walz that is relevant to the committee's investigation." Putting your views on his politics aside here for a moment, how can Tim Walz be a heartbeat away from the presidency if these whistleblower disclosures turn out to be true? About 45 seconds to you.
Yeah, Todd, what makes this important is that it's coming from a whistleblower from within the agency. This is not a political hack somewhere from the RNC who's making this accusation. So they have to take it seriously. James Comer has no option but to investigate it. You know, let's not forget that Donald Trump was impeached because somebody said, gee, I think there was a phone call that was inappropriate, which turned out it wasn't inappropriate. The impeachment was a sham. So if we're going to play by the rules of, okay, some somebody made an accusation. Nobody's saying, let's impeach Tim Walz, but by golly, we need to find out what the heck happened and does he have a relationship with the Chinese?
Yeah, of all the countries one could have a relationship with, you're allowed to have, normal relations, but to the extent that it goes this deep, we need to find out. Governor Mike Huckabee, appreciate you as always.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.